And it says, goes back to what we talked about last time. Explain the difference between aerobic and anaerobic, and make a list of 3 activities that would fall into each group. So we'll start with the difference between them. So it basically differentiate between anaerobic and aerobic. So why don't we start with, Taylor, why don't you start us off with this? Yeah, tell me the difference between them.
Aerobic activities take energy.
Do you mean energy?
Oxygen.
Okay.
And anaerobic doesn't.
All right, yeah, that's the difference, right? Aerobic activities take oxygen, need oxygen to complete them. Anaerobic activities, not so much. It goes a different pathway. So what I wanted to do is to help understand this is come up with a list of 3 things that would be considered anaerobic and 3 things that would be considered aerobic. So let's start a list of 3 anaerobic things first. Spencer, what's an activity you could do that would be anaerobic? Tell me why. Though I agree with your sentiment, I don't think golfers are athletes because they really don't do that much. That is not noted. So I agree with you there. I don't think that would be considered an anaerobic sport.
It's not a sport.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a sport, let alone anaerobic. Golf is like a thing. Huh? Sport is anything you do.
No, not anything you do, but anything you
That's
do.
what
Anything you do competitively.
Oh.
Yeah. Specifically competitively.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not getting into this debate because I know. Do you know why I know him right?
They just built an esports arena.
You know why I know him right? No, because I'm the teacher. The teacher's never wrong. I know this stuff. Yeah, it is. Look it up. It's on Wikipedia. So, it is. You find it. You can find anything on Wikipedia. Yeah, I'll put it on there as soon as class is over. So, golf is not an anaerobic activity. We're looking for things that are anaerobic. Things that are, if you need a quick refresher, anaerobic stuff is short, like huge bursts of energy are anaerobic things. Lifting weights, yeah, powerlifting or something like that is an anaerobic deal. Short, really high intensity, and over quick. You don't have to breathe really hard to do it, but when you're done, it takes you a while to recover. Derek? Get specific about football. What about football would be anaerobic? Okay. So I'm trying to picture that in my head, like maybe running routes as a receiver would be anaerobic because you're sprinting, making your cuts and doing that stuff. Yeah. Or if you're on the line and you're trying to push guys off for 5 or 10 seconds and you're done and you're breathing hard trying to catch up. Yeah, short bursts of really high intensity energy. Leah? Yeah, specifically, like some swimming is, some swimming's not. Give me an event that would be.
50 free.
Yeah, like the sprint. That's a swim sprint, right? Like a 50 free.
Yeah.
And then there's, do you know who Katie Ledecky is?
Yeah.
She does, what is it? Is it the 800 free? And that's kind of like a that's an aerobic one. That's like a long. So yeah, short sprint stuff, anaerobic. That's right. Let's get one more anaerobic one. I think we got 3. Let's shoot for 4. Tanner, give me an anaerobic thing. Get specific about volleyball and tell me why. So, I think maybe there's a little confusion here. So anaerobic doesn't mean you're not doing much. It means like short, super high intensity bursts of energy. Want to think of a sport where super high intensity bursts of energy followed by like a. Give me an example. Yeah, right. You're on a fast break or you're trying to get back on defense, sprinting it out, running suicides on the basketball court. All of them. Very good. Those are anaerobic things. Huh? Probably. Barely. It's basically. So those things, again, characteristics are short duration, so don't last very long because you can't do anaerobic stuff very long because it starts to hurt. And as much as you think you can push through pain, there's only so much you can take before your body finally says, like, I can't do it anymore. Even if you're that mentally strong, your body isn't that physically strong to do that indefinitely. So your body breaks down eventually. Right, Christian?
No.
Could you focus on me, please? Thank you. So what about aerobic activities? Things that are kind of the opposite. Long duration activities that are not like huge outputs of energy like instantaneously. It's like long drawn out energy releases within you. Noah? Yeah, long distance swimming would count for that. If you're going to go swim for an hour or do whatever, 2 miles in the pool or something like that. Yeah, that's absolutely an aerobic one. JJ? Bike riding. Yeah, totally. Long distance bike riding, like if you are like a Lance Armstrong type. Do we have any BMX guys or girls in here? That's like anaerobic. Those short, like what's a race? 30 seconds or 50 seconds or something like that? Yeah, it's like a sprint. You go over, you do this, and then you're done. That's kind of anaerobic. But the long distance, like mountain bike, commuting, that's aerobic. Derek? Soccer, yeah, that's probably some of both with sprints involved with it. But I think I read somewhere like the average soccer player in a game runs like 4 or 5 miles or something like that a game. That's pretty significant. That's aerobic. Yeah, basketball too, right? As you're just getting up and down the court and not doing sprints, if you're just kind of doing your thing, running your cuts and stuff like that. Yeah, aerobic stuff, the key points are aerobic stuff is long duration, kind of slow releases of energy. Still use a lot of energy, but it's like a slow release of energy, like the things you guys talked about. You can do it for a long period of time, like running. If you just go out and jog, you can jog for, believe it or not, you can jog for quite a while, even if you're not in shape. You can just kind of deal with the pain and jog for as long as you can possibly imagine. But a sprint is something like no matter how much pain you can deal with, you can only sprint for so long because you can't possibly get enough oxygen inside your body, and eventually your body like breaks down. You lose motor control of your legs. You'll start to stumble. You'll fall. You just can't physically do it. So that's how you can kind of think of aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic, you can just keep doing. Anaerobic stuff, your body's going to give out before you think it normally would. So, good enough. You guys can put your warm-ups away. You got to know that cell respiration is like a process, and there are multiple steps that happen in it. It's not just like, bam, you make energy. There are multiple steps in the process of making energy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps that are there, including like the aerobic way, which is with oxygen for the long duration stuff, and the anaerobic way for the stuff that's like short, high-intensity parts. So we're going to go through the order of events that happen. And these events that are coming up here, we'll break down in more detail as we go through. But these are the events you got to know. Mr. Hall.
Why didn't we do this when we were doing the heart rate lab? We were doing exercises.
We were. Yeah, we can think about that. So, first thing, and these are the names of the processes over here, and these are the orders that they occur in. So the first thing that always occurs, this is what you're doing inside your body right now, along with the other stuff, but this is the first process that occurs. It's called glycolysis. Glycolysis. If you look at it, it kind of looks like glycolysis, but if you say glycolysis, you're just putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. So you got to go with glycolysis. Michael. I'm better than a dictionary. I told you how to sound it out. Glycolysis. I'm like a human dictionary. Yeah, go ahead. Ask me to spell a word. Huh? That's not even a real word, man.
It's a real word.
The definition is that one line at the top.
So, first thing that happens is glycolysis. And you can see here, it says it always occurs. That is because whether you've got enough oxygen or not to make it happen, glycolysis happens. If you look at the first two, or the parts of these words, the first part of it is glyco. And if you know about, I don't know how much you know about sugar or anything, but one form of sugar that's in your body is called glucose. So that's where that part comes from. Glyco is from glucose. And then in Maine, where I'm from, we had to take Latin, which makes like science a little easier sometimes. But the second part of that word is lyse, L-Y-S-E, made into lysis. But do you guys know what lyse means, L-Y-S-E? means to split. Like when something lyses, it's split. So literally what this process does is it splits sugar in half. So glycolysis, splits sugar. And that's where all your energy comes from in your blood. It's in the form of sugar. It gets delivered to your cells. They go through this process of glycolysis, and that's how you begin making energy inside your body. So now, if you've got oxygen, oxygen, you're going through an aerobic process, which is called cellular respiration. It goes to this next step. So this is part 2 of this whole process, and that's called the Krebs cycle. And you can see there, it says it only occurs when oxygen is present, so that means it's part of the aerobic part of this. So that's the Krebs cycle. So with oxygen goes glycolysis, Krebs. This would be a great one to set up like a flow chart on or something like that in your notes. Instead of just listing them, you could have like a flow chart. So glycolysis, Krebs. If oxygen's present, this is the end of the line. This is where most of your energy comes out of. If oxygen's present, that's called the electron transport chain. From here on out, so I don't have to write electron transport chain every single time, and so you guys don't have to write electron transport chain every single time. You can just call it the ETC from here on out and make it easier on yourself. Otherwise, that's like a 5-minute word. All right. Everybody else can write ETC. Christians can write electron transport chain. Every single time. I'm going to make sure the next time I do this, I'm going to have like 50 occurrences of that phrase in there. Just ETC. It's over quick.
Yeah.
Except it'd be E period, T period, C period. It's 3 words. Human dictionary, like I was saying earlier. I'll give you a while. So, this is what happens if there's no oxygen present. If there's no oxygen present, the process goes from glycolysis, and here's where your flow chart would kind of come in. Glycolysis right to fermentation if there is no oxygen present. If there is oxygen present, bang, bang, bang. If there's no oxygen present, just glycolysis and fermentation. That's it. Good with this list, with this order of stuff? All right, so I'm going to flip this over then. You guys sure that's all right? All right. Did that last time. And we're going to start right here with definition. Another definition of cell respiration. You guys had it in your notes last time, so if you don't need it again, then so be it. That's fine. But it is this process of cell respiration. It's how energy from food, right? Because when you eat food like Jordan's doing right now, and he should not be doing right now because he's in class. Thank you, Jordan. It's how energy from food gets turned into energy in your body. You've got to go through a process, because what you can't do is like put hot dogs in a blender and then give yourself an IV of hot dogs and expect it to like make energy for you. It doesn't work that way. You can't put celery in a blender and like mainline celery. You can't mainline steak or pizza or anything like that. That's the only way, really, unless you get like a stomach tube, that you can get nutrients. You can do stuff like they can give you stuff through an IV, I guess, but we got to turn energy from food into energy our body can use. Part of that process is digestion. Another part of that process is this process called cell respiration. So that's how we turn it into ATP. ATP, another abbreviation, stands for adenosine triphosphate. We'll get that later. And adenosine triphosphate is basically, it's like a full battery. Every one of those is like a full battery you got inside of you. You use them up, and when you use them up, they turn into this thing called ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and that's an empty battery. And your body just recycles it and charges it up again. So this is how we store energies in ATP. Michael?
How many of those do you have?
In those things, honestly, I don't know an answer to that. So I'm totally going to guess, and if you look it up, I'm probably dead wrong. but I would guess it's somewhere in like the trillions. And that, again, I'm saying this, like, I'm probably wrong by a factor of like 1 million, but we've got lots of them.
That's all you did a lot.
Okay. 5.
Hey, that's enough.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't like supercharge you because it's like it's energy that's stored, and when your body needs it, it uses it. So it's not like you'd be like plugging yourself in and going like wild. Yeah, so you'd be able to go for a longer duration, but I think ATP, like your stores of ATP, only last for about 3 seconds or so. So you've only got about 3 seconds of this stuff stored up, and then your body's got to start producing it over again. So the whole process starts with a molecule of sugar, which is called glucose. So that's going to be the start of our whole process. Your body has glucose in your blood. That's what gets transported. And one of the things that gets transported in your blood is a sugar called glucose. And for future reference, just in case you were wondering about this, anything that ends in OSE is a sugar. It's like when you look on your cereal box and it says it's got fructose or galactose or lactose or anything like that, anything that ends in OSE is a sugar. I don't think so, but again, that's something that I've never heard of. So just because I've never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. All right. So we'll start with where these things occur. So we've talked about glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain, and we're going to talk about where these things happen. So right now it's just the location inside the cell that these happen in. And if you remember, we've got a cell, right? So if you consider the cell this big overall body, inside of it there's the things we learned about. You guys call them the powerhouses of the cell. Mitochondria, right? Which is a specific organelle. And then there's also this goop inside the cell that all the organelles kind of float in. Remember the name of that stuff? Cytoplasm. So those are the two things we'll talk about here, are mitochondria and cytoplasm. So the first thing where glycolysis occurs, and you can put this on your old notes, you can just like tag onto it. You don't have to write this whole thing again if you've already got glycolysis listed. But it happens in that goop, in the cytoplasm is where this happens. So it takes a sugar molecule, breaks it in half, and that happens in the cytoplasm, like outside of the cell. So here's a picture of it here, if you can see it. It's happening outside, of the cell, of the mitochondria. It's happening outside of that. The thing, it breaks it in half. It creates 2 molecules of pyruvic acid and also some carrier molecules, which we'll talk about. Those things are shipped into the mitochondria. So glycolysis outside the cell, or outside the mitochondria in the cytoplasm, breaks it in half. The rest of it happens inside the mitochondria. The Krebs cycle happens in this stuff called the matrix inside the mitochondria. It has nothing to do with Keanu Reeves or anything like that, I promise. The matrix, just like you know how the cell has cytoplasm inside of it, and we kind of called it the goop for lack of a better term, inside the middle of a mitochondria, so this is a picture of a mitochondria really blown up, it's got basically like goop inside of it. And in that goop, it's a chemical mixture, and I don't even know the chemicals that are in there or its components or any part about it. But the matrix is where this Krebs cycle, and we'll go pretty in-depth about the Krebs cycle, that's where that happens. So the products in glycolysis, stuff gets broken, and they're shipped inside here into the goop inside the mitochondria, and that's where the Krebs cycle happens. And then the last part, the electron transport chain, or the ETC, or the etc., whatever you want to call it, happens inside this part of it. It should happen in the membrane of the mitochondria. So these little folds right here, that's where that stuff's happening. So these are like level 1 questions, right? What are the names of the processes that occur in cellular respiration? You'd be able to name them in order. Where does glycolysis happen? That's a level 1 question. You'd be able to tell me, where does the Krebs cycle happen? Where does electron transport chain happen? So this is all like level 1 stuff. To get to level 2 or level 3, you've got to understand level 1 stuff first. That's kind of where we're at. Oh, sorry, Leah. So this next slide we got is the last one we'll do for today. And it's going to be somewhat in-depth and over the process of glycolysis. So the first step in this cell respiration. It always happens whether there's oxygen or not. It's always happening in your cytoplasm. It's happening right now. And we'll talk about how it works. But it starts with glucose. And there's no reason why anybody would know this, but sometimes I get a random person that knows this, like they remember it from last year or something. And that is like the chemical formula. You know how like water is H2O and stuff like that. The chemical formula for glucose, you would have done it last year as you like balanced chemical equations in your physical world class. I said there's always someone. Yeah, JJ's got it. So JJ says it is C6H12O6. And if you guys can remember back to last year, do you know what that means? Yeah, it's glucose. It means 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens, right? So a lot of times, and in these pictures here, you're going to see glucose represented as like 6 circles, like that. And that's because it's called a 6-carbon molecule. So when we look at it, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're starting with something that's 6 carbons big. Off of those carbons, we've got hydrogens that come off of there. So it's like hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. So you wind up with all the correct number of hydrogens on there and oxygens as well. So C6H12O6 is glucose, and that's something you're going to have to remember. If you're not good at that, you might put a little star beside or something. But we're going to get the chemical equation for for cell respiration down, and that's going to be part of it. So that's going to be something you got to remember. No, there's going to be more to it than this, since it's like sugar plus oxygen equals carbon dioxide and water. So there's going to be more to it than that. So we're going to start, though, with glycolysis here. And you can see all the way over on the side, you see these 6 gray circles? They represent glucose, because glucose, like we said, is 6 carbons. So that's why you see a 6-circle thing here. So this is the start. This is all like one fluid process, so it happens, in fractions of a second. But here's the start of it. Glucose gets delivered to your cell by your body's delivery system. Sarah, what's the system in your body that would deliver stuff to your cells? No. Ooh, right answer to the wrong question. So that's the right answer to what's the thing in your cell that ships stuff around in your body. But the question is, what's the stuff in your body that ships stuff around to your cells? And if you're thinking this hard about it, you're thinking too hard. You need like a 2nd grade answer to this. So you're just thinking about it too in depth. John? Yeah, blood's the stuff, right? Blood is what carries oxygen out to your cells, is what carries glucose out to your cells. So this is delivered to your cell by blood. It's absorbed into your cell through those processes we talked about last time, like osmosis, and it absorbs into your cell. And as soon as it gets in there, this process starts. The first thing that happens is this. It gets, as it's going to say here, split into 2. So this thing gets divided in half. So consider it a stick if you want. And as soon as it enters the cell, this thing gets broken in half. And that happens right here. And just like breaking a stick on your knee or something like that, it takes a little bit of energy to do it. Right? It takes a little bit of energy to break something. It takes a little bit of energy to break that thing off. And that's what this shows you here. This is like the input for cell respiration, and this is the output down here. So it takes a little bit. These represent a full battery of energy. It takes a little bit of energy to break it in half, and this is an empty battery. So there's the energy it uses. Here's what comes out. And the result is this thing gets broken apart into 2 3-carbon molecules. So it breaks it in half. When it breaks it in half, though, it releases energy. So it takes a little bit of energy to break it, but when it does that, it releases more energy than it took to break it. You get out of it, as it's going to say here, here's what it says. It requires 2 ATP to split it, so it takes 2 to snap it in half and break it. But what you get out of it is this. You get 4 ATP. So it took 2 ATP to break it in half. It took 2 little batteries to break it. But the result is you get 4 batteries from it. So if it took 2 to break it, but you get 4 from it, how much do you gain overall? What's your net gain? 2. Yeah, so you get a net gain of 2 ATP. You get 2 molecules of pyruvic acid or pyruvate, which is this stuff. So that's just that broken in half. When they're all connected, it's called glucose, when they're broken in half, they're called pyruvate or pyruvic acid. And then you get these things. These are called NADH or NADP or NAD up here. And what those are is they are like I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this. They're basically like an empty bucket up here, and this is a full bucket down here. When this thing snaps, I said it releases energy. This is an empty bucket waiting for energy to get dumped into it, and when it's got the H attached to it, it's full of energy. So it just comes in and scoops up that energy that thing released. That's what its job is. It's called a carrier molecule. And that's the process of glycolysis. It's as simple or as complex as that. And we will go into more detail on that, but that's the basics. So level 1 questions about this would be stuff like, how many ATP does it take to start glycolysis? 2. Another level 1 question would be, how many ATP come out of this? 4. How many NADH come out of this? 4. So level 2 questions would be like, what if you didn't have enough ATP to start glycolysis? What would be the result? What would happen? So those are level 1 questions, the simple stuff for glycolysis. And with that, you can put your notes away for today. Michael? So this is that thing I was just talking about. It's a carrier molecule. So with the H on the end of it, it means it's a bucket that's full of energy. It's actually going to take that energy and go deliver it someplace else. So it like collects it there to deliver someplace else. JJ, and then over there. What do you mean? Yeah? I don't know what you mean when you say the structure. Oh, gotcha. So it's just going to be half of that. So it's C3H6O3. Oh, I see what you're saying here, and I don't think that's where those come from. I'll double check though, and I might be wrong, and if I am wrong, I'm on video, and you can go back and say, but I don't think that's where they come from, but I'll double check for you. All right. Yeah. But this is what's going to wind up on page 9, we said, right? All right. So you are going to start. And this can take up I would, in fact, like this diamond shape that you see here, I would make this take up like 3/4 of your page 9. You want that to be big because you're going to write words in there and stuff like that. So you want this diamond to take up about 3/4 of that page. The neater you can make it, the better off you're going to be. If you need another piece of paper, you should just ask rather than... Do you need another piece of paper? Okay, you should just ask. But on the 2 lines below your word aerobic, you're going to give me 2 adjectives that describe aerobic. Adjectives are like describing words. As colors are describing words, or, fast, slow, whatever. Those are describing words. Under those 2 lines, we're going to put 3 lines. And on those lines, you're going to have 3 verbs that would relate to aerobic. So 3 ING words, verbs or action words that relate to the word aerobic up there. So we started with 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines. And then right in the middle, going across the widest part of your diamond here, we'd have 4 lines. Yeah, we're getting crazy. So 4 lines across the middle here. And these are going to be adjectives that you could use to describe both of these words that they have in common. So adjectives that aerobic and anaerobic are going to have in common are going to go in the middle here. So you've got 4 lines. Going down below that, 3 lines. Those are going to be verbs that are going to describe this word on the bottom. So it's like a mirror image of what's on top. So 3 verbs that would describe anaerobic. 2 lines. 2 adjectives that would describe anaerobic. And it's called a diamante poem, or however you pronounce it if you're educated. Poem? I think that's how you say it if you're smart. I think so. The smart people I know call it a poem. What other 2? So these are, all 4 of these are adjectives that both these words would have in common. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I lose you? Okay. is, as you look at the top left, I've got a color diagram, a multicolor diagram of the word number 1, which is aerobic, and an explanation of word number 1 over here. So a multicolor diagram of aerobic and an explanation over here. Explanation of anaerobic over here and a multicolor diagram of anaerobic over there. So this is all pretty straightforward. There's not too much to worry about there. And then the paragraph down here, or the thing on the bottom quarter of your page that you're going to write in, you're just going to explain to me how each of the words you put in there relates to the word that you're talking about. Like if you put the word running in here, how does the word running relate to anaerobic there? That's what we got. So that's your output page for it here. And what time are we out? Is it 14? Is that right? Yeah. Perfect. You guys got about 20 minutes, and that's about what it'll take to get this done, probably. There you go.